Hello, up there. Oh, how high you are. Today I'm going to show you a trick. Here's my bass. It's missing something. I'm not sure what it is. Yes, the fretboard. Yeah, and the neck is missing because I removed it. But the trick I'm going to show you is you don't have to remove the neck to do this, but I did some tricks with the neck which I unfortunately didn't record. The trick is to, instead of buying new strings, you could actually live with the old strings a bit longer by boiling them. So I'm going to show you how to do that. But I can talk a little bit about the neck too. I didn't film it, but I did some things to make the neck better. So what I did, first I taped up with masking tape, the fretboard, everything here, the rosewood, dark, and where the neck fits into the body, I put it in there and checked which parts that are in contact with the body and taped up them too, because I didn't want my finish on the neck to build up, because it's a pretty tight fit with the body, and if I put finish on here, down here, then it won't fit anymore. So I don't know if you can see it, but my finish here is teak oil, which I put on, and here is no teak oil and here is teak oil, so maybe you can't see the difference in this light, but it looks nice. So what I did, I sanded with 400 grit after masking, so I don't want to sand the brown thing. I sanded this transparent thing, this light wood, with 400 grit, then put on teak oil on a rag and rubbed it on. Then after 10 minutes, took a clean rag and wipe off the excess. And then after 4 hours repeated the process again. Put on new oil, went 10 minutes, and then wipe off the excess. And you can see it's pretty good. You don't want it to be too glossy, the neck, because then the hand can stick while moving it back and forth, because you don't want this to stick, want it squeaky effect, don't want it to stick. But this is perfect. And for the fretboard I used, yes, there's one more thing, the truss rod here. It was a little bit hard to adjust the truss rod, so I put on some grease. This is in Swedish, it says hjullagerfett, and in English I think it's like wheel bearing grease, I think. So I removed the screw completely, the truss rod here at the nut, and I put just a little bit of grease into, I don't know what to call it in English, into this cavity, and then screwed it back on here in the truss rod, so it's easier to adjust, so it goes softer. Don't use some oil that's liquid, because you don't want the oil to get in contact with the wood, because it might have some unfortunate effects. So I used grease instead, which is a little bit more, it's not so runny. Yeah, and I put teak oil on here too, but on the fretboard I used a different product. I used this product from Dunlop. It's the Dunlop lemon oil for fretboards. So I used the same technique there. I put some lemon oil on the rag and then rub in the lemon oil, wait 10 minutes, and then wipe off the excess. And I go against the grain like this. The grains go like this, but when I rub it in I go like this. And to remove the grease, sometimes if you play much you get some grease between the frets. I used a razor blade like this and drag to clean, and then afterward rub this way with lemon oil. Yeah, so that's the neck procedure. And for the strings, yeah, just remove the strings and boil them for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, something like that. Yeah, so before boiling the strings, I thought that while I have the neck removed and everything removed, I just wipe some dust off here, and you can use some wax and grease remover, or if you don't have that, use some things that you use for the windows, like Windex, or in Swedish fönsterputs. And now I don't have that, but I had some Kärcher window washing. So just put some on a rag or cloth or whatever it's called in English, not sure, trasa in Swedish, and just clean it. And this thing that you use on windows are good because it's you don't have to wipe it off afterwards because it just removes itself. It condenses into the air. And if you do a paint job like sanding, you should always use something like this to remove the sand, this sand dust afterwards. So you must always remove this sand dust before going on and starting to do layers of paint or lacquer. Maybe I should take a clean rag now. Like new. This pick guard has some damages on it. There's been a lot of beer and wine and stuff spilling on here. So maybe I should do something about the pick guard. These microphones here are replaced. It's not the original. That was on. This is a cheap Squire. In the original, had a cheesy white paint, which I removed, and did the stain job following the instruction from Brad and Go channel, and I can recommend Brad and Go on YouTube. I will put a link in the description. So if you're going to do a paint job on your guitar or bass, follow the instructions on the Brad and Go channel. Very good. So I didn't do a very good sanding job because I used this drilling machine with a sand rotator on it, so I got some uneven parts here on the surface. But at least it's shiny, and the color is nice, and the grain is like enhanced because the wood sucked in the stain, so and enhanced the colors and enhanced the grain pattern. So it looks very nice, I think, but it's not perfectly even, and it was because of a poor sanding job. Next time I will do a better sanding job, and I will do a custom guitar kit for my son on his birthday. Shh, don't tell him. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna give him a Stratocaster built from scratch. I'm gonna do a custom paint job on it too. Alright, now it's time to boil the strings. One more thing. Yes, so this was a cheap Squire in the beginning, and I replaced the microphones with better ones. This is Seymour Duncan, Steve Harris signature microphones, and you can put whatever microphones you like there, but Seymour Duncan, I like Steve Harris from Iron Maiden, so I put Steve Harris microphones in there. And this part is called a stable. You can replace this too because the original Fender is not 100% good. So I am going to replace this with a Leo Kwan Badass 2, but I couldn't find one, so I found a copy called All Parts Omega bass. Well, those two things can change a cheap bass into a good bass. Yes, and then maybe you do some work with the neck too, to make the frets even, and make sure that the frets are rounded, so you don't, when you move your hand, you don't feel the frets, or maybe cut yourself on the frets. Yeah. So maybe I will do a video, or check out the Brad Ango video about that too, about how to fix the neck. So before boiling the strings, I thought I'd maybe do some manual mechanical removal of grease from the strings using the same wax and grease remover, which in my case happened to be window washer concentrated from Kärcher. So I have it on the rag and just remove. And you can see it's discolored. It means some grease got off the string. And then I'm going to boil the strings afterwards. Okay, so I went out into the garage and found this old thing, which I'm not using for food. Maybe you could use it for food too, but maybe it's not very appetizing to boil strings in the same thing that you use for food. And I don't know, just make them fit in there, maybe doing a circle like this. I think I'll use this one because it has the same size. Alright, there, and maybe I put some, what's this called in English? Yes, this dishwasher in it too, to remove some extra grease and make sure the strings are actually in the water. This boiled like 10 minutes. The water is not dirty, like from grease from the strings, more purple, which is from the coloration of this material that is on the end of the strings. Maybe this was an unnecessary exercise to boil the strings because they were already pretty clean after I used the Windex on the rag to clean them. And this is flat wound strings, so they have a kind of flat surface. Normal strings do not have this flat surface, and it makes more sense to boil them. It doesn't really make very much sense to boil flat wound strings because you can just wipe off the dirt.